So this all kicks off with a really weird story. In early 2024, a brand new George Carlin comedy special drops online. The only thing is, George Carlin's been dead since 2008.
Now, what people were watching wasn't some lost recording they just found in a vault. Nope. This was a completely synthetic performance, an AI imitation that just absolutely nailed his cynical tone for our modern times. And, you guessed it, it went viral, sparked a massive controversy, and, yeah, it ended in a lawsuit from Carlin's estate.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, right? How can a fake performance feel so incredibly true to so many people? Look, it's not because people are gullible. It's because we're human. We are hardwired to trust a familiar tone. And that powerful instinct, well, it's pretty much at the core of everything we're going through politically right now.
And you know that feeling, that sense that everything is just teetering on the edge? It turns out that's not some fringe idea. It's pretty much the mainstream mood. I mean, just look at these numbers from a 2023 Pew Research poll. When people think about politics, a staggering 65% of Americans feel exhausted, 55% feel angry, and hope barely even makes a showing at 10%.
So if you're one of those people who feels like the world is maybe coming to an end, we're here to tell you two things. First, and this is a big one, it is not just you. You are definitely not alone. And second, the world is probably not ending. It just feels that way. And it feels that way for a very specific, very structural reason.
So the way American politics works right now, it's all based on what the source material for this explainer calls a ledger. Think about it. Both sides keep this running, meticulous tally of every single grievance, every broken norm, every outrage. But here's the thing about this ledger. It's not designed to settle accounts. It's a machine built for perpetual escalation. Every entry basically pre-approves the next act of retaliation.
And this right here is the crucial point. It is so tempting to blame all this on bad politicians or social media or just plain old ignorance. But the sources we're looking at argue the real cause is structural. We have built a system where one single central government is trying to be the referee for the deeply held, often conflicting moral beliefs of a massive, incredibly diverse population. And that system, it's under an unbelievable amount of stress.
Okay, this slide just illustrates the problem of scale so perfectly. Think about it. How often do you hear people on both the left and the right point to a country like Sweden as a model for, well, for whatever they want to do? But Sweden has 10.5 million people. The US has 340 million. It's like comparing your local coffee shop to Starbucks. I mean, the comparison is just fundamentally absurd, but we keep making it over and over again.
So what happens when you expect a single central government to be the final word on everything? I'm talking about deeply personal moral stuff, from education and medicine to family life and even what we can say. Well, what happens is that every single election, rationally, becomes this insane, high-stakes, winner-take-all fight for reality itself. You're not just arguing about tax policy anymore. You are literally fighting over who gets to define the future.
All right, so how does this high-stakes environment actually change the way we think? Well, it all starts with ideology. And, in its best form, an ideology is just a useful tool. It's like a lens that helps you make sense of a really complicated world. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
But then, things can go wrong. That helpful ideology can start to harden into dogma. The best analogy is something like atherosclerosis for your ideas. Seriously, the framework gets rigid, like plaque building up in an artery. And once that happens, new information, it just can't circulate anymore. The whole system becomes brittle, fragile, and totally unable to adapt.
And a political system that gets infected with dogma, it loses its most important function. It can still speak, sure. In fact, it can get really loud, shouting its own beliefs. But it becomes completely, fundamentally incapable of listening to or processing any kind of dissent. It essentially goes deaf.
So how can you actually spot dogma out in the wild? Well, there are 5 key signs, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle we're talking about. First, its core beliefs are impossible to test. There's literally no piece of evidence that could ever prove them wrong. Second, dissenters aren't debated, they're just expelled from the tribe. Third, people stop making arguments and start attacking motives. Fourth, talking about the real-world costs or trade-offs of a policy, that becomes completely taboo. And finally, number 5, everything, and I mean everything, gets framed as a permanent existential emergency.
You know, the real tragedy here isn't just that each side is blind to the other's point of view. The deepest blindness is that both sides fail to see the one huge thing they actually have in common. They both believe the only solution is to capture that central machine of government and force the other side to comply. And all that does is prove the other side's absolute worst fears, which just guarantees the conflict will get even worse.
And this structure, this system, it creates all these predictable distortions across our entire society. The stakes, every election feels like it's civilization ending. The incentives, loyalty to your tribe beats actual competence every time. Information, nuanced facts get totally drowned out by propaganda. The law, rules become weapons to use against your opponents. And trust, neighbors start to look like enemies. The end result of all this? For at least half the country, at any given time, the government feels like it's being run by an alien power.
So, what's the one idea, the one potential solution that is almost completely unspeakable in this environment? It's decentralization. The simple thought of returning significant power away from Washington, D.C. and back to states and local communities is treated as basically unthinkable by both sides. And yet, here's the crazy irony. Our highly centralized system is the very engine creating the conflict that both sides claim to hate so much.
Which leaves us with a final, and maybe pretty provocative thought. All this end times anxiety we're feeling, it's not actually a sign that the world is ending, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of a system that is designed to generate constant existential conflict. So the real question isn't about which side is going to win the next battle. The much bigger question is, when do we, as a society, decide to get off this treadmill and finally start talking about redesigning the machine itself?